Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DiscoTrek. I'm Alexandra August.
I'm Johnny Kolasinski.
And welcome to our Star Trek Discovery podcast.
You can find this podcast on Twitter at the DiscoTrek, on Facebook / the DiscoTrek, and eventually at thediscotrek.com.
Woohoo! This week we are discussing the mid-season finale, Into the Forest I Go.
Last episode until what they're calling Chapter 2, which premieres in early January.
Yeah, we don't have an exact date on that, but it's going to...
I believe it's January 9th.
We have an exact date on that. It's going to be about 2 months. It's January 9th. And we will be doing some mid-season content. The basic idea is that we're going to have a guest on each week, and we will discuss their favorite Star Trek episode. This show has made us very nostalgic for the back catalog of Star Trek, which is broad and very deep. So we thought we'd bring on some seasoned Trekker guests and hear their favorites and discuss those. So expect a wide variety. It's going to be fun.
And I'm starting this episode off right by being incorrect. It's January 7th.
January 7th. Guys, you'll figure out when the show's on the air.
All the best. If it's a Sunday in January and it's not the 2nd, it started. Also, just as a quick note, if you're listening to this on the Got Thrones feed, this is the last episode we'll be releasing that way. Mm-hmm. So make sure you switch over. And if we'll toss the notes on all of our social media.
Yes, we will. Yeah, they're on our social media, and then if you're listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher, the directions and links to the different streams are there. If you are listening to this on the DiscoTrek stream, you're in the right spot. If you happen to be a Game of Thrones fan, though, we encourage you to check out our other podcast, Got Thrones, a Game of Thrones podcast, available wherever you can download podcasts.
Yeah, wherever fine podcasts are sold for free.
So I think with that, let's think that's really the only announcement sort of stuff we have to...
that's the business.
Yeah, the business. So yeah, let's jump into it, because this was an episode we could really sink our teeth into. And then pick them with a dog tag. And
pick them with a command insignia.
Our P.S. R.I.P. Kenneth Mitchell. Cole was it's kind of a piece of shit, but he was entertaining.
Yeah. And however many other Klingons were there.
Yes.
Because they all looked the same.
Yes they did. Yeah, they've been looking the same a lot lately. Though I feel like the lady Klingons are definitely wearing skirts. We could see that. But so briefly, the synopsis was it was pretty complicated what happened this week. But basically, broad strokes are that Starfleet orders the Discovery away from Pavo because they're like, we don't care about the nice non-corporeal beings. We're very happy that they would like harmony, but you got to get behind enemy. You got to get back from behind enemy lines, or you got to get back into Starfleet space or Federation space. And Lorca's like, that's really terrible, and the Admiral's like, nah, we don't care. And so they are ordered back to Starbase 46, and Lorca decides to warp them there to give the ship a couple of hours to come up with a solution to see through the Klingon cloaks so they can justify staying at Pavo and defending the planet. They, Saru and Stamets, I think Saru and Burnham figure out a way to use the Discovery's jumping capability to get to
essentially to bullet time it,
like
the Matrix.
I mean, you might want to explain this a little bit more than I. You might be able to explain this a little bit better than I can, because essentially it involves getting 2 sensors on board the Klingon coffin ship, and then the Discovery, then activating those sensors, creating an uplink with Discovery, and then Discovery jumps a bunch, and they basically figured out a way to get a 3D rendering of the sarcophagus ship. But I'm kind of lost beyond that. Like,
that is basically it. I was about to push my glasses up on my nose and say, well, essentially they're getting a 3D rendering of the ship by approaching it from multiple angles over a rapid succession of time. And then you said exactly that.
Okay, but did this allow them to get an algorithm that will help them detect all ships, or just this particular one?
I think it'll help them detect all ships, because it's, this is what it looks like from this angle and that angle and that angle and that angle.
And it seemed like the algorithm they gained was essentially a way to do that without jumping 133 times. Anyway, okay, we'll get to that.
the algorithm, they gained the algorithm so that at any angle they'd be able to detect it, and if they hadn't been able to jump, it would have taken them days to get all of those different angles.
Cool. So that's the plan. And so Burnham and Tyler beam aboard the ship of death to place the sensors. They place one, then they discover that there's a human life sign, which is Admiral Cornwell, who is alive. Hooray. They find her. Tyler, however, they also find Laurel. Tyler has essentially a PTSD flashback, according to Cornwell, and is basically in a fugue state. So Cornwell tells Burnham that she has to go complete her mission on her own, because he's not going to be useful anytime soon, which was kind of funny, but not because it's did not mean to make
it was humor of the
gallows. Exactly. And so Burnham runs to the bridge, hides out while places the other sensor. Once the uplink is created, Discovery starts completing its 133 jumps and basically jumping in and out and sort of sending almost just shots across the bow, like scratch attacks to this Klingon ship. And the Klingon ship kind of plays a game for a while, and it's like, why are we sitting here? This is stupid. They make to leave. Burnham decides to stall by revealing herself to Cole, says that she's the one who killed Takuvma and started the war, and challenges him to hand-to-hand combat, playing to sort of his sense of honor. She stalls for time. Luckily, by the time she stays alive long enough for Discovery to complete the 133 jumps, Tyler, Cornwell, and Laurel actually beam back to the Discovery, and they also manage to get Burnham mid-jump, like mid-dive, beamed back aboard. So the mission is a success. They can see the ship when they can see the ship when it's cloaked, which, as any good Trek fan knows, means that if a ship is cloaked,
has no
shields, and they destroy it. Meanwhile, Stamets completes the jumps, obviously at great personal risk. Culber finds out that it's real, that he is undergoing side effects, but supports him throughout. They have kind of a nice "I love you" moment before he completes the 133 jumps, but he manages to do it with apparently out any.
Yeah, he's just fine. So he says, "I'll do it one more time to get us."
Yeah,
home.
And they really play up that moment, and they do one more time to get us home, and that's the one. The 134th time was the one too many, and he screams a very loud scream, passes out, and then Culber recognizes a ton of activity in his white matter, which is not a term that
which is a thing.
Yeah,
I'm
sure it has not come up in Grey's Anatomy, so I don't know what it is. And his eyes look like they have cataracts on them, and he talks about seeing everything. So you kind of get the sense that he's gone warp 10 and he's everywhere at once.
He's gone Gary Mitchell.
Gary Mitchell?
The original series guy who turns into a god and has to be put down.
Oh,
much
yeah.
Much like in
the Silver Eyes.
Is it? Yeah. It's not Q. Who? What's the episode where? That's the only Q episode that doesn't have a Q title.
No,
where
Tapestry
Riker gets power. Oh, I guess Tapestry too. But there's the first season Beardless Riker.
Yeah, they make them together. I don't know.
Power. What is the title of that one? I don't know.
We'll have to look that one up. But
bad research.
Yeah. So that's one of the cliffhangers for the cliff. Like, also Stamets breaks, basically he shuts down mid jump, and so like any good Battlestar Galactica fan knows, if you mess with jumps, you could end up God knows where, which is exactly what happens. Yeah. And they have no idea where they are. They jump to an area where there's a bunch of Klingon wreckage. My guess is they're behind enemy lines.
There's a bunch of wreckage that may or may not be Klingon.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the fact that they say it's Klingon, they're like, is it Klingon wreckage?
They say, is it Klingon? I think that means that it's not.
Well, I mean, they're like, it looks like a bunch of Klingon wreckage. Well, we'll get to that, I guess. But
yeah.
It'd be pretty cool. I don't know. Anyway, so, a lot happened.
Yeah, this was an excellent episode, but I do stand by what I said last week, that it didn't really feel like last week was a cliffhanger. Or it wasn't a two-part
Yeah,
episode.
this one felt like, I mean, honestly, this one felt over after the battle was done, and like Burnham and Tyler came back aboard the ship, and Tyler kind of confronted Laurel. Like, I could have ended there. This stuff with...
No, I mean, last week's episode wasn't really connected.
No, I agree. Oh, you mean this? Oh, you mean these two did not feel
coming
like...
into it.
Yeah,
because it was billed as as essentially a 2-part episode, but Pavo could have been Ewok.
They were such...
And it wouldn't have changed the story at all.
Yeah. Like, this episode made me dislike the last episode. Made me...
Oh, the last episode made me dislike
With you there, too. Civis Pacem Parabellum. You can sit down now. Yeah, you're right. It was so differently directed. It was such a better paced episode this week, too. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Now that you mention it, like, it really bore... This episode bore more relation to the whole of the series, the overarching arc, than last episode did. And it related more to the whole of the series more than it related to last episode, which was supposed to be its companion piece. I kind of see this, and I think you were right. You mentioned this last week, and I read something that confirmed it. Last week's episode was supposed to be the season ender, was supposed to be the mid-season break, which it wasn't a great mid-season break, but you can feel the... I almost would have preferred 8 weeks between these two. That feels like a more natural space than having them back to back, because they were so unrelated in so many ways.
I disagree. I think if last week had been the mid-season finale, you would have had a lot of people not come back.
Well, I mean, I only mean in the sense of the 2 episodes relating to each other. I think the 2 episodes should have been further apart. I don't know. But yeah.
I mean, this one. The planet could have just as easily been the dilithium mines we saw in episode, what was it, 4?
Oh yeah.
Or was it even episode 3?
It might have been episode 3.
Where it was whatever episode they learned to jump. So
it was
it had
4.
To have been episode 4.
It was 4, because 3 was just sort of her first day on the Discovery.
Yeah.
I did love the title of this episode. I guess let's do some broad. The title of this episode was brilliant to me. It almost made me think it was another Alice in Wonderland quote, and it wasn't. It's a John Muir quote, which I did not know offhand. I totally looked that up, but it is a John Muir quote.
Well, we talked about it last week.
You talked about it, and I was like, okay, sure. Do you want to give some background on that? Are you a John Muir fan, or?
My wife is much more than I am, because she's, works in natural resources, has her background in natural resources, but the quote is, "And into the forest I go to lose my mind and soul,"
which is so like just resonates on a lot of different levels. Mm-hmm. It really called back to sort of what they've been saying, what Brian Fuller said about Discovery from day one, which was that it's both inward and outward exploration.
Mm-hmm. There was an interesting conversation, I think I saw it on Reddit, about Burnham's arc in this episode versus in the 2-part series premiere, The Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. Everything Burnham does, even though she's very decisive about it, ultimately after the point where she knocks out Georgiou, it doesn't matter. Yes, she kills a Klingon, but it's not the first time it's happened. Yes, she raises weapons, but it's not the first time it's happened. Everything has been set in motion already, and this war was going to happen. But she escalates it further by feeling like she needs to be the decision maker here. Meanwhile, when we get to her time on the bridge of the Ship of the Dead the second time around in this episode, she is stalling for time, essentially, by still being the decisive one, mirroring her decisions, but acting in order to allow her crew to move forward. And I found that just really interesting.
I can, behind sort of the sort of emotional technical talk of that, you can see that she's more confident and more peaceful. Like, she's less anxious this episode. She's more sure that what she's doing is the moves she's making, even if they're risky, even if they're out of bounds, are the right ones. Like when she can, I don't know, to the point where I didn't love it when she confronted Lorca on the bridge, just because I'm really sick of people confronting captains on bridges, because it's still the military and it's just, you just don't do that. And Lorca was like,
Jellicoe would never have let that happen.
What?
Jellicoe would never have let that happen.
No, Janeway wouldn't have let that happen. Like, Seven of Nine did that once, and I remember her, like, Janeway was like, get the, like, good and more ready. Yeah, it's, I don't know, that's just been a line. And then Lorca just continues the conversation and lets her talk her way out of a direct order, which kind of bugged me. But it was it very much mirrored what happened with her and Giorgio. Mm-hmm. And there was no desperation in Burnham's voice. It was a very well-reasoned... It was a very well-reasoned logical argument, to the point where I was kind of like, why didn't you just send her? I mean, she is the only person who's been on that ship. She is the best person to go. Like, she can't describe a Klingon ship to someone. I don't know. That seemed very...
Well, it's shiny, and smells of meat.
Mm-hmm. And all the corridors
look... the place that smells most of meat.
Most of meat, yeah. Everything's bronze, which is the only thing that hasn't been redesigned. So, yeah, it was... I really feel like Burnham, almost to a fault, has been given a very complete arc this season, and a very good arc. You know, yeah. It feels organic. It feels... I know I use that word a lot, but that's kind of the most important thing to me in a story, is that it feels organic and not contrived. And
I wish you weren't quite so biased against silicon-based life forms.
I know, that's a problem.
Yeah,
I just don't.
Emails.
Ding 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 ding.
Mostly from Horta.
Yeah, I will say, and I'm curious what you think about this. I read an article that mentioned this, and it kind of articulated something that I've been feeling that I hadn't really been able to express yet, and that's... This isn't really an ensemble show the way Star Trek is normally an ensemble show. Yeah. It is the Michael Burnham Hour, which I'm not...
featuring Lorca and special guest star Mary Wiseman.
Yeah, and that guy from Rent.
Yeah, and
I'd say it's, you know, it doesn't... The thing is, it doesn't feel like a bad show for that. I mean, there are a lot of dramas that are structured this way, and it's not... It's certainly not... It's not bad television, but one
First
of the
few episodes of The Walking Dead are The Rick Show.
Yeah. And, you know, and they tend to be, it's still, I would even argue the first couple of seasons are the Rick Show, given that, like, very few other characters get their own episodes until that show really found its feet. I binged this show I've sort of mainlined it, so I might be wrong about that, but it really did feel like, you know, we didn't get just because it was so action based and the group was so tightly knit, we didn't get single character episodes for a while because they didn't have time to spread out. But, you know, that's one of the things I liked about Star Trek, because you have these tertiary characters like, you know, Dax and Miles on DS9, and Troy and Crusher, who, you know, by virtue of, and Geordi, like, you know, these were not center stage characters most of the time. So when you got an episode,
even Enterprise, you early on got a Travis Mayweather episode.
Yeah, and it was satisfying because it helps you understand when you do have these broader episodes that either feature all of the crew for not a lot of time, or you know, one of the captains or Burnham. It feels like the stage is set a little bit better because we would have gotten intimate looks at Stamets or Tilly or something like that if this were a different show. So I'm hoping that in the second half of the season, or just in the second season, we're able to branch out a bit from Burnham's story, because that's something that I'm not nuts about. Like, I don't want this to be the Burnham show for however long the show goes on. This is one of the things I liked about Star Trek was the ensemble nature of it.
Yeah.
So.
It'd be interesting to look at Next Generation and Voyager specifically in their first 9 episodes and see how much of them... I guess they were all strict ensemble shows because neither of those two were the Captain Picard or the Captain Janeway hour.
No, not really. Like, they were definitely, like, Janeway and Picard and Sisko were definitely the heads of their... Were definitely in charge and definitely the stars of the show for sure. But
I think by episode 9, I think we'd already lost Tasha Yar.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was... Yeah, it's still just... I think also because the way Star Trek was written for most of the time, Janeway, Picard, and Sisko were the stars of their show, but we never got very intimate with them. Picard, we didn't get to know Picard very intimately until the third or fourth season, and that's it, even then only like for a couple of episodes at a time. Like Family is probably the first episode where we see him entirely in civvies and actually like show some real breakdown emotion.
Yeah.
And Sisko, we see that in the very beginning of the pilot, but then he backs off because he's emotionally bottled up.
Yep, then he backs off until he punches Q.
Yeah, and it's just, we don't get that intimate look that we've gotten of Michael Burnham. So not only are we seeing more of Burnham than we're seeing the rest of Q, we're getting to see Burnham in her, like, we've seen her in her underwear already, and she's already got a romance. So it's just a lot. And again, it's not bad. It's just, this is sort of something that I'm getting used to.
And even last week, which was Saru focused, it didn't feel like we learned much about Saru.
Right, because we couldn't trust that it was him.
Last week was the weak link of the season.
Yeah, and I think part of that was the fact that we couldn't tell we didn't know until the very end of the episode that it was Saru acting and not these beings overtaking him and acting on his behalf. That it was actually, so, you spend the episode thinking that it's not Saru, it's Saru, being overtaken.
It's the evil criminal that have taken over his mind.
It's like possessed. Saru's possessed.
Yeah, it's possessed Saru. But nope. It was influenced Saru.
Yeah, or hopeful Saru. Yeah, sort of Saru on his own drug, I guess. Saru on ecstasy, perhaps. So yeah, that was. But I to circle back around, I kind of one of the things I really liked about this episode was that the final. It was just a nice, lovely bookend to the Battle of the Binary Stars and Georgie's death. Like, it didn't feel contrived. It didn't feel shitty. It felt really, or it didn't feel shitty. I mean, I don't know why it would feel shitty, but
I feel like we could have watched the first 4 episodes, moving up to episode 5 was Choose Your Pain, right?
Yes.
Moving up to Choose Your Pain. And with the exception of Ash Tyler walking in, it would have felt like you wouldn't have. It would have all made sense.
Yeah, like we didn't.
As soon as we got that spore drive working.
Yeah, that could have flowed very easily as a single story.
Yeah, which I liked.
Yeah, and I didn't think I enjoyed the episodes we got between this. Like, don't get us wrong.
Oh, no. But in no means did it feel like we wasted time, except for
yeah. But this was they're very, very, very well connected to the first 2 episodes, and especially I think that's a large credit to Sonequa Martin Green's performance. You could see her she saw the necessity of what she had to do in confronting Cole, but you could also see her sort of just ecstatic at the opportunity that had presented itself, and she was very much at exactly the right place at exactly the right time, and she was finally getting the chance to avenge her friend and to make up for what she's done. Like, that was a thread to her own vengeance and her own redemption has been a thread this whole season, and I thought that was very well served this week.
Yes, and I felt like her personal stakes were higher than they were in Battle of the Binary Stars, but despite the fact that it was, a much more emotional moment.
Well, and I think because we've seen her grow into herself, and we've seen her, she's not flying by the seat of her pants, and she, like we said, she's confident, and she's not going off of sheer instinct and desperation. Right. Doesn't mean she was necessarily wrong in Battle of the Binary Stars, but she's more certain. And it was awesome to watch her. Like, I'm totally fangirling a little bit, but it was awesome to watch her fight Cole, hold her own, and get back up when she was all bloodied and they start laughing at humans, because it wouldn't be a Klingon human battle if they didn't laugh at the puny human.
Exactly.
And it was just awesome to see a woman get up and be like, no.
Round 2 fight.
Yep. And it was also, so, and then again, I think like the tornado kick move over the railing, and then her getting beamed out midair was so dope. Though I was really sorry to see that beautiful set go to waste.
Yeah. But I feel like they showcased it the best this episode.
Agreed. I loved this fight compared to Georgiou's fight with Takuvma. Mm-hmm. Pitch perfect. So much better. Yes. I could actually see what was happening.
You could see what was happening. The show has grown it into itself very well. Mm. Speaking of kind of the arc between those first 4 episodes and then this final one, and this is me seamlessly moving into the next point, one of the next points in our show notes. Captain Lorca. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you cut out everything after Choose Your Pain, or up to and including Choose Your Pain, that Captain Lorca would make sense.
Yeah.
But
this is a much more boring Captain Lorca, which is my problem.
To me, it's not so much that it's a much more boring Captain Lorca, except for the fact that it's a potentially slightly more stable Captain Lorca. But it's cowboy instead of madman. And
yeah,
I feel like if we hadn't seen so much of Lorca, then Lorca felt kind of grimdark.
Well, yeah, I think you're describing inconsistency. We saw Lorca one way, and now we're seeing him another way.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's the amount of time that he's spent on screen. I think that they've presented him very differently in different episodes. I've tried to work my way around this, and it's frustrating because I just think that I'm worried that I'm worried that they don't quite have a handle on him, and I liked him. I liked his moral ambiguity, and this week there just wasn't any of that. He and Stamets are good friends again, and there's no darkness there, which I kind of like that I was kind of into, but it was just also another like click to me of like, I don't think you like this guy at all, and I don't think that I feel like you're playing him, but nothing in the dialogue says that. It's just Jason Isaacs doing it, but it just seems, I don't know. It just
unless what we're seeing now is Captain Lorca before the Bandu is not the name of his last ship.
I forget.
Yep.
Baran, maybe?
Baran, yes,
I don't
that's
know.
it.
Yeah, okay. Woo.
Bandu is like the maker of crappy Nintendo games in 1994. This is the captain that we didn't see, the captain that got lost after the Baran.
Maybe. I'm frustrated. I think my brain is just. I don't know. I'm having trouble justifying this because I'm still very frustrated with the whole Cornwall thing. I'm really, really annoyed that they just sent her off the ship and that she wasn't screaming at the top of her freaking lungs what he did. Because she knows, and it.
Does she?
Yeah, you saw it in her face when her phaser didn't work. She knew. And why go through the motions of having her see that? Maybe even if she doesn't, we know he knows. Like, why would you set up that conflict? And also, she told him that he was going to lose his command, and all of a sudden, she's captured. You cannot tell me she wouldn't at least be like, get to my fucking sickbay office now, and we are going to talk about this. And so the fact that they didn't show us any of that there was no follow-up with that, concerns me. And it feels like a loose end that really shouldn't be a loose end. And so that's an issue for me. And I just, I don't know. I feel like Lorca, Lorca's inconsistencies continue to trouble me, and I'm hoping it's just because they're having a hard time figuring out. I'm hoping it's just an issue of the writers' room being like, okay, well, we've established this, but we can't afford to give him a lot of attention in the back half of the first half of the first season. So maybe his darkness will come around again, because he's still the guy who murdered everyone on his own ship, and he's still the guy who definitely sent Cornwell to certain death or certain torture, knowing what would happen to her. So that can't be erased. And if I'm hoping hoping they don't try, because if they do, I'll lose a lot of faith in this show, because that's a huge thing to let pass by, especially for Star Trek.
I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, I don't want to see 7 seasons of a captain that I don't like.
Well, and see, that's the thing. I think the key is going to be Cornwell. He's like, Cornwell's going to be the person who's like, I think the only way out of this is that they have an episode where Lorca proves to Cornwell that he's fit.
Or they have Lorca's family episode. Not episode about his family, but his equivalent of family from TNG.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Where we see him deal with everything and kind of come out of it having
knowing not to send admirals to knowing not to send like previous girlfriends off to the Klingons to save his own skin. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that has to come back with her. Like they have to have, and she'll be the moral compass that to me will be able to assuage my doubts about him. So I'm just hoping that happens, because I'm like I think we're in agreement. Like on the one hand, they need to deal with this. On the other hand, I agree with you. He can't. That's kind of why I was concerned last week or the week before when I was like, I don't know that they can have him around. Honestly, I don't think this kind of captain fits in the Star Trek ethos, and I don't. Which basically means for me he's marked for death. But so I'm hoping. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because I like him.
I like him at times. I still don't know that. I didn't catch that he swapped the phasers.
Give it a rewatch.
Okay,
I would. Yeah.
But I haven't rewatched it since we discussed it. So,
it's the episode is, I don't know, but I really did like that he was like he like had his Visine handy so he could watch the explosion of the coffin.
Yeah.
Get me my drops.
Wait for it.
That was
puts on sunglasses. That
was like oh man, he should have put on sunglasses. That would have been so Point Break. Also, so this is just an interesting, like, weird little theory that I came up with, and I'm sure somebody else has, but his tribble's been missing basically since Ash Tyler got on board, and would sell, like, oh man, I would give some kind of non-essential organ to have the tribble be the one that outs Ash Tyler as, like, part Klingon.
Or we find out that Ash ate it.
Ash is like ambient sleepwalking and finds himself in the ready room, and there's just footage of him being like separating his jaw and like shoving the tribble down.
I hope chapter 2, which is what they're calling the second half of the season, just opens with Ash talking about growing up near Seattle and, walking is hard and, dog.
Oh, or
and
he's
just
like
more and more slipping out.
Or he just gave me an idea. He like the camera's a close up and Ash Tyler's like talking about growing up in Seattle. He's talking about some kind of like horrible thing that he saw on the Klingon warship, and then we pan out and he's like just gently cutting apart like a cooked tribble. And he's speaking to the tribble. I don't know.
Yeah. Or he just starts talking about his grandma's gach stroganoff.
I just don't know why, if you have a tribble, why aren't you going to use it? Like, part of me wonders, like, it's never occurred to me, and I don't know why it didn't. Why does Lorca have the tribble in part as, like, a Klingon detector?
Well, they don't know that it's a Klingon detector yet.
Don't they?
No, because they figured that out in Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh.
Tad Cooper is a Klingon detector.
Hi, folks. Welcome to guest host Tad Cooper.
Yeah, he is our guest host this week.
Tad Cooper does not like tribbles, and Tribble does not like Tad Cooper.
He does believe that Ash Tyler is a Klingon.
Javid Iqbal lives. Oh, damn. Part of me was really hoping that Lorca had, like, heard this urban legend and just had one on his desk just in case. Like, last-ditch attempt if he gets bored and he's going to hold up at his ready room and just have the tribble at the ready. Like Burnham and Tyler, like, when they beamed over at battle stance, essentially, or crouch, which was super cool. This was a great action episode. There were a lot of moments where I was like,
whoa! Yes, it
was. Really, yeah. Like, just when the Discovery was jumping in and out, the cloak, and
this is one of those episodes that you could see that they put money
for
into
sure. Oh yeah, big time.
And not just production value wise, and effects wise, but the hand-to-hand combat was exquisite.
Oh yeah, yeah, and the cinematography on that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. They did go back to a lot of the Dutch angles, the really off-kilter shots.
It did not bother me as much, I will say.
I honestly think that it's something that they're, and this is, again, me Monday morning directing, but I think it's Saru's so tall that they have to get him in frame.
I have to wonder about that. That's funny. I liked that he called Saru number 1. For some reason, I really got a kick about that. And also when he was convincing Stamets to do the jump thing, when he said, "You can go where no one has gone before." It's like, "You've gone where no man's gone before." And I was like...
Which we only heard from Mud so far.
Did Mud say that?
Yeah, Mud said you guys are boldly going where no one has gone before, but not worrying about the little men on the earth.
I think he just says boldly going. I don't think we've heard where no one's gone before.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it's boldly going.
Only because that struck me so much that I feel like I hadn't heard it before. And in any case, it was cool.
Yep, agreed. So speaking of boldly going, where are they?
Yeah, that's a very... I think we briefly touched on this in the synopsis. My guess, and this is just what I got from what came to me as I was watching the episode, which just means like that's my subconscious reading the plot and everything, and taking in all the cues and the storytelling cues is that they are deep behind Klingon enemy lines with no way of getting out, because we're still going to continue the Klingon arc for the rest of the season. They make mention of the fact that they appear to be surrounded by a bunch of Klingon debris, and I just don't see why you would say that the way they said it. This is obviously not gospel truth, but my instinct is that they're behind Klingon enemy lines, but obviously not, but I would say in a less populated part of the Klingon Empire. This whole thing reminded me a whole lot of Caretaker and Voyager getting pulled out.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
so it made
very much.
Yeah, so I think for certain, I feel like it would. They're very, very far from home wherever they are. Mm-hmm. Ooh, or they're in a different.
Alternatively, Deja Q.
How so?
In the being pulled out to who the hell knows where.
Oh, you mean Death Wish when the Q's...
No, Deja Q where they first encounter the Borg.
Oh, no, that's Q Who.
Oh, that is Q Who, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Take one point away from me.
That's okay. I'm here to help you with all of your Q knowledge needs.
My theory is either Mirror Universe or Far Past, Far Future. Because they also made a point to talk about how, look at these
alternate universes.
Here's this chart that means absolutely nothing to anyone.
Good point.
Which kind of resembled the chart that in Enterprise, Crewman Daniels from the future shows Captain Archer.
You're gonna make me rewatch Enterprise, aren't you?
I am. I'm gonna keep doing this. Every time you bring up Grey's Anatomy, I'm gonna bring up Enterprise.
Okay, Grey's Anatomy is a good show. I don't see,
Enterprise has as many good episodes as Grey's Anatomy does.
I think we should have Shonda Rhimes on this show.
To talk about her favorite episode of Enterprise.
We should ask her how she thinks Grey's Anatomy stands up to Star Trek Enterprise. We should just have DiscoTrek Great Debates.
How quickly can I get on Shonda Rhimes' shit list? No, you're wrong. Here's why. Andorians.
Also, Shonda Rhimes, not the friendliest lady. So that's partly why I would like to see this. Shonda Rhimes, if you're listening, I waited on you a lot, and you're just a little closed off. She probably just thought we were actors and trying to get parts, but which was pretty true.
Which was true.
Yeah. We would never have done that in a professional setting, though. That's it. I honestly, I like that a lot. Now that you said that, I kind of, it makes more sense to me that they would be in an alternate universe, because we still haven't had... Is Frakes confirmed? Jonathan Frakes, sorry, we're not that close. Is Jonathan Frakes confirmed?
Yeah, Jonathan is confirmed.
No, I know he's confirmed, but is he confirmed to be directing the Mirror Universe episode?
He is not confirmed, to my knowledge, to be directing the Mirror Universe episode, but he is confirmed, and Mirror Universe episode is confirmed.
Okay, so I kind of, yeah. Well, and also, I feel like I've heard not just Mirror Universe episode, but like Mirror Universe arc.
Which, yeah, I have heard that as well, but from sources that I would take with a grain of salt.
Yeah, none
that they weren't Akiva Goldsman.
Yeah.
Or Matt Myra.
Yeah, this is definitely speculation. But I think that would be... Yeah, you know what, maybe I honestly, like, I like that idea much, much better than mine. So, thanks for that. I don't know, I'm not, I feel you, I feel more the alternate universe than I feel time. Feel forward and backward in time just because they made the obvious point of mentioning it. So now I'm kind of pissed that I didn't come up with it either. But I really maybe an alternate universe in which in which we're seeing it kind of like it's like it would be an alternate timeline, like an alternate universe in which Burnham wasn't there or something like that, or like she made a decision and this universe split off from it in that kind of capacity.
Yeah, or just flat out Mirror Universe where Burnham killed Jarju and took over.
Just destroyed the entire Klingon Empire because she felt like it.
Yeah.
Also fun.
As she was serving the needs of Empress Hoshi 3.
Well, also, too, because if this is Mirror Universe, that would really, like, she wouldn't have the same relationship with Vulcan. She would be if we're going to go to the Mirror Universe, I would guess we'd meet a very different Burnham, because, folks, if you're not familiar with the Mirror Universe, which I guess for the purposes of this discussion, not necessarily this episode, I would recommend watching the original TOS Mirror and the Enterprise Mirror Universe arc, because what we're going to talk about for a second is the Vulcan.
Make a note, November 13th, 2017, Alexandra recommended an episode of Enterprise.
The only episode of Enterprise that I've seen multiple times, because it is the Mirror Universe episode, and I will watch anything having to do with the Mirror Universe because it's never not good. But yeah, so basically the Vulcans have been enslaved by the quote Terran Empire, so the Earth Empire, as opposed to the Federation. Like we said, everyone's an asshole in the Mirror Universe. They are the worst version of themselves. So humans, instead of seeking cohabitation and peaceful coexistence with other races, just conquer the shit out of everyone, and they're real good at it. Yeah. And the problem with the Terran Empire is that essentially it gets too big to hold. Or that happens in Dark Mirror, which is a book and not canon.
Which is a novelization.
But I think essentially that is what happens, because they get too big and they piss off too many people, and so the subjugated species band together and overthrow them. But in the meantime, before that happens kind of in the DS9 era, or it happens in the interim between TOS and DS9. In the interim, Vulcans are one of these enslaved races. So it is highly unlikely that Burnham that Sarek would be able to raise Burnham and get her to study and tutor her. She just wouldn't have had that kind of relationship with him, because he wouldn't have had the same status. So
right.
And also she would,
if anything, he'd have been like a nanny.
Yeah, exactly. Like he would have been her tutor in some capacity. Like, right. You know, if she had this high status, and she also would be a much, much bigger asshole. So part of me is really curious to see if that's the case. I think we're getting I think we're speculating probably way too far ahead, but
that's what we're here for.
And I love speculating about the Mirror Universe.
We speculate so you don't have to.
I mean, we could just. Okay, so since we talked about our off-season content, and since we talked about the book Dark Mirror, part of me has really, really leaned into the idea of reading that book chapter by chapter and having that be part of our mid-season content.
We need to find a way to do a daily podcast to get through it.
I don't know, man.
The 10 weeks we have.
I don't know, man. That book, I read that book pretty quickly in 7th grade. I have a feeling we could probably. It's not that long.
It was one of the big paperbacks.
Oh, I had the hardcover.
It was a hardcover. I had it as a paperback.
Oh, I actually didn't own it. I got it from the library a couple of times, and I might just get the page count on that, because I feel like we could do 50. I feel like it reads quickly. We could probably do 50 pages a week. I don't know. Might be ambitious.
All right, you chart it
maybe
out.
Off-season content, maybe not mid-season content. I don't know. I'm really excited about it, though. Maybe I just want to read the book again.
Okay, I'm just putting out right now that I am not doing a podcast on Imzadi.
Oh, why not? Oh, such a
and
good
now just
book.
cut to the gang does a podcast on Imzadi.
We can skip the very PG-13 naughty bits. So speaking of sex.
Speaking of sex, Tyler.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we saw our first Klingon boobs.
Yep, I don't know that I need to see.
I don't know that I need to see any more. I don't know that it was at all necessary.
I've never been a fan of a naked Klingon. We saw it when Worf got his spinal injury. We saw Worf's spine, and that was kind of like you guys are like dinosaurs. There's something very alligator-like about a naked Klingon, and I'm just not. I was kind of squinting looking at the flashback, which I mean, as they were essentially rape, we probably should have been, but
yeah. I have to be completely honest, and
super
as
into
much
it.
as I loved the "it's fucking cool" scene, I don't think that actually seeing Klingon boobs served the plot in any way, and making those choices and meaning that someone who's 12 years old like you and I were when we were watching Star Trek and bonding over wouldn't be able to watch it is the one thing that kind of disappoints me about the let's have a 21st century Star Trek series.
That's a good point. It wasn't really one that I considered, I think, at this point, just because it's a TV MA, and so I think that in and of itself. But that isn't something...
Well, that's what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
It's like the gruesomeness, etc.
Mm-hmm. We're not going to get any young fans to Disco, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of adults that this would engage new fans... A lot of new adult fans, like, there's still a stigma surrounding Star Trek. Like, I've talked to my friends who like prestige television and like prestige sci-fi, and they're still like, nah, it's still Star Trek. Still for dorks.
Yeah.
So there's still, like, we're still losers.
They said the same thing about Game of Thrones for 2 seasons.
Did they? Yeah, and then the Red Wedding happened.
Took a while. Then the Red Wedding happened, and you found out that everyone was actually watching it.
then the Red Wedding happened, and they were like, "We're fucking serious, okay? You need to watch this."
Yeah. I'm really interested to see what happens when season 1 gets on Netflix.
Yeah, this will be. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, it's I know. I think I mean, Game of Thrones is a little bit different in that there's not such a massive canon barrier to entry. Like, you don't need to read the books to watch Game of Thrones, and I think the perception is that you kind of need to be a Star Trek fan to appreciate this Star Trek. I think that's patently incorrect. You do not have to be.
But we have no room to really talk.
No, I think it enhances your enjoyment. But I mean, if all of you all have 600 hours to watch the entire Star Trek canon plus the movies, like, by all means go for it. But I don't expect you to. I'm certainly not going to rewatch it. So
I have a feeling that no one who's listening to this podcast, this is their first Star Trek series.
Oh, I hope.
But if you are, please let us know.
Yeah.
Because you're the kind of
you're a unicorn.
Yeah, you're a unicorn. If you can do that and also form coherent sentences, we'd love to talk Star Trek with you on the podcast.
Yes, please. I guess so. My feeling on the maturity level for this and on I think this was a brilliant portrayal of PTSD. I think it was incredibly sensitive, and it didn't feel too heavy-handed. The lock her up felt a little heavy-handed, but it was something that I enjoyed. Yeah, because I think the Klingons are pretty nakedly standing in for the far right in this country, just with their party line.
Just with the Klingon nationalism.
Yeah, and the fact that, like, they go to Burnham and they say lock her up, which I just don't know that's something. I don't know. That's hard. It would be really hard for you to convince me that was a coincidence of any kind, but. The Tyler PTSD stuff I thought was because on the one hand I don't really believe that in the 22nd century, 23rd or 20 we're in 23rd, sorry,
we're in 23rd.
Yeah, I don't believe in the 23rd century that we're still referring to that condition as PTSD, just because medical science would have advanced 2 centuries. So the fact that but that didn't bother me because they
like at this point in time they're like just calling it the Whibleys or something.
Like it's medical, like, I mean, we don't call even diseases that we still know the same amount about. We don't call like.
Well, PTSD 100 years ago was shell shock.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so the anachronistic nature of Cornwell calling it out as PTSD did not feel contrived and did not feel contrived to me. It didn't stick out to me. It still felt organic. And the way they've treated Tyler so far, he's still very strong. He's still very charming. He's not in any capacity weakened by his disease or by this condition other than the condition itself. Mm-hmm. And the way they dealt with his sexual assault was really, really nicely done.
Yeah.
And my only problem with this is that this episode also pretty much confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt that Voke is...
That he's calm.
Yeah, essentially. And so for me, but he's Voke, and he's Voke that doesn't remember who he is. Like there's some sort of mental rejiggering. Right. And that for me really undercuts this stuff. I think it's great that it happened, but I don't think it's going to resonate much beyond, like, once we find out who he is, all of, like, that's going to cease to resonate. And that was kind of a meh to me.
Yeah.
But not damningly so.
I think that the Tyler arc is that Voke is going to come through and Tyler's going to win out.
So I think we're dealing definitely with some kind of sleeper agent, very a la Boomer in Battlestar. But I'm wondering if Tyler wasn't a separate person and Laurel's house, Mokai, just knows how to do like biological like consciousness transfer. I don't know what that's called.
Yeah.
And managed to like.
It's called nothing because it's Star Trek.
Well, but there's something they refer to it like.
They talk about memory engrams and
yeah,
such.
like organic memory transfer, something like that. That was referred to because that's how essentially the Cylons like download. So there was a sciencey word for that. That sounds better. But I'm hoping that Tyler's his own person, and they did that so he had a record and he could easily get on the Discovery, and they just found a way to insert Voke in there, which I like a lot better because that in and of itself is a wonderful metaphor for sexual assault, a much bigger one and a much more interesting and compelling one. Which would really make this that would elevate the show to a level of kind of brilliance for me, just in terms of like topical relevance and dealing with that.
Well, not only that, but also the fact that, not to get all men's rights activists, but we don't talk about male victims of sexual assault
at all. And it's becoming increasingly relevant given what's happening in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, given what's happening with. Or happened to members of the
Jesus God, you're right. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
But I mean, obviously, this is not. I'm not saying this to in any way discount the.
No. It's
countless examples of female sexual assault in the industry. And
God, of course not. No, as a female who's experienced that, I didn't. Yeah, we all share the same pool in this one.
Yeah, it's something that in entertainment, male sexual assault is generally addressed with a laugh.
Exactly. Or just not addressed at all.
Yep.
Doesn't exist.
So, so that's very interesting.
This was just, yeah.
Downer.
What?
Downer.
I don't know that it is, though, because it's, it sucks, but it, so jeez, I don't know. I'm not trying to minimize, but yeah, it's like this is the way we need to be going. Like this is the road that we should be on. Is that this happens to everyone, and we need vocabulary, and it needs to be represented first. And
frankly, the way Star Trek has addressed essentially any issue of sexuality or sexual assault has been lacking in every series. Whether it's Troy getting mind raped once a season,
and then on Nemesis, and that being
yeah.
Actually, I kind of liked the Nemesis one just because she got to like serve that guy at the very end, and that was pretty dope.
Yeah. Instead of just learning something from it, like in. Three separate episodes of TNG where she identified a criminal because he was also raping her.
Or that guy that manipulated her into having sex with him because he was an empath and he knew exactly how to charm her, and she basically was like, what? Yep. What the hell? And like that was it. Nope, that's
or the generations
super messed up.
The generations of Crusher ghost rape.
Oh yeah, that was super weird. The candles.
Season 7 was weird.
God, that was strange. That episode will never not. What is that called? What episode? It is
Sub Rosa.
Sub Rosa. Guys, if you are not TNG watchers, Brian Croner, I am speaking to you. You need to watch yourself some Sub Rosa just for the like sheer quick factor of that episode. I have no idea how they got that made. No idea at all. It is weird and gross, and it's like watching your mom, you know.
It's also they're in Scotland for some reason. And then Ron Moore does Outlander.
Outlander's
It all makes sense.
Maybe we should talk about
Outlander is just Ron Moore's extended Sub Rosa fan fiction.
Which is much better than the original. I will. So I think the last point that I wanted to bring up, and I'm curious, just because this has always bothered me and it's always wondered me. One of the things that I really liked this week was that Cole finally nailed the Klingon that I like when he was like, "Oh, I've got this little piece. I see that it belongs. I see that it's important to you. I've been using it to pick my teeth." Like that's, and he smiles. And this guy's a pirate. This guy, I mean, he's a piece of shit, but he's having fun.
Yeah, he's enjoying himself. He's
living his best life. He's
Gowron on his bad days, or Duras Sisters, or any of the original series.
He's like Mirror Universe Martok almost. He's like the evil version of Martok. He's what a Klingon warrior generally should be. You know, they're singing songs. This is what, like, they are warriors through and through, and when they are warriors, they're happy. They have, like, that's what the biggest conflict with Worf always was, is that Worf was so freaking dour all the time, and whenever he was around Klingons that were ruckus and boisterous and having a good time, Worf just didn't know how to do that.
Worf wants his prune juice.
Well, yeah, because Worf had to...
Not his blood.
Yeah, and Worf had to button it up. Worf had to subvert all his instincts because he grew up around humans, and he killed that kid once.
And not just that, but Worf grew up believing in the Klingon ideal of honor because he grew up away from it.
Yeah, and so
Whereas the Klingon ideal of honor shared by most of the Klingons that we see is not honor, it's pride.
Yeah, and it's more of a religion that it's sort of like they go to church on Christmas and Easter. Worf went every Sunday and like for Saturday Vespers, and I like that. It's I think you're right, and I think when Worf meets I love that the Klingons, every Klingon Worf meets is like, just dude, dial it back. You are making the rest of us look unfun.
Even Kalas is like,
I know. Well, and like that's what's fun about Martok, because Martok kind of lightens Worf up a little bit. Yeah, Martok is like, can you just give it a rest, dude? Like, smile.
There is one person, one Klingon, who holds up to Worf in the Stogie honor is everything idealism, and that is Mrs. Martok.
Oh, that's right. Mrs. Martok was the worst.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Also a Klingon nationalist.
Oh, guys. Okay, so you need to watch You Are Cordially Invited. It's an episode of DS9 where Worf and Dax get married, and Worf has been inducted into the House of Martok, so in order for him to get married, he needs to get his bride approved by his, like, quote, mom, who is Mrs. Martok, and so we get Martok's wife coming on board, and they see each other, like, once every 6 months, A, because Martok is, like, away from home and working, and B, because you get the sense she just, like, doesn't like him that much.
Right.
And she, like, takes one look at Jadzia and is like, no fucking way. Yeah. No way. And so the entire episode is spent, like, her putting Jadzia through these, like, awful tests. And Jadzia is like, excuse me, I was a Klingon ambassador, kind of, for a bunch of years. And eventually, like, she has to eat crow and pay homage to Mrs. Martok. And then everybody gets married and they're happy. And then Jadzia dies next year. And Mrs. Martok is never mentioned again.
Mrs. Martok is, for Game of Thrones, for those of you who are coming from Got Thrones, if you take Olenna Tyrell and then take away everything you like about Olenna Tyrell,
it's like Olenna Tyrell meets Cersei.
It's like Olenna Tyrell meets Lisa Aaron. Lysa.
Yeah. Just an unfun Olenna. I think you had it right first. Just an unfun Olenna Tyrell. Just.
Yeah. Ooh, Mrs. Martok does not brush.
Ooh, Mrs. Martok's just Tywin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right.
Mrs. Martok. Yeah.
Mrs. Martok does not brunch. She has like.
The words of House Mrs. Martok are, "We do not brunch."
Oh, Mrs. Martok would love the Iron Islanders.
Oh my god.
She and
Cole.
She and Theon's dad, I feel like, would get along real well.
Yeah. Well, so Balon and Cole would get along really well.
I think Balon and Voke. Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. Balon doesn't have enough fun either.
No, Voke is damn.
Well, okay. Balon and no. I think Cole and
Euron.
Yes. Oh, such fun.
Cole Greyjoy.
Ronnie Greyjoy would get such a kick out of the coffin ship. He would totally steal it.
Does that make Voke Theon?
I don't know. I don't know if Theon is represented yet. I think we might have to wait that one out a little bit. I think Theon might be Ash Tyler by the end of this.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm just in love with the idea of Ronnie Greyjoy like traveling through universes in time and seeing the sarcophagus ship and being like, that is the best idea. And then all of a sudden, season 8, Revenge Silence shows up and there's just a bunch of coffins hanging off of it. He hasn't quite figured out how to affix them properly yet, so the structural integrity is not great, but he's getting there.
Well, we can't cloak, but we're going to cut the tongues out of all of our sailors.
So speaking of this Klingon business, I'm kind of curious. Klingons, they're this warrior race, and we talk about this a lot, obviously, because it's the distinguishing characteristic that we've been beaten over the head with for the past 50 years. But how much do Klingons like war? Like, do we think the Klingons are a race that starts wars for shits and giggles? Because you get the feeling that they're just really good at, like, is it, and DS9 especially, they talk, like, the Klingons are not stupid. Like, they don't start shit just for fun because they know that essentially war costs them a lot. They are warriors, but they're not indulgent warriors. But I feel like that kind of is murky.
I'm going to go both ways. Take it back to Game of Thrones, not facetiously this time. They are the Iron Islanders. If they go to war when someone goes to war with them, but when no one's at war with them, they're raiding.
I think these Klingons.
These Klingons. No, I think even...
I wouldn't say 24th century Klingons would do that. I think maybe the Klingons of the original series, perhaps. But 24th century Klingons were better behaved.
Klingons still would have, because we ended with Martok and Worf, but we started with Duras and Gowron.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Gowron was a slimy individual.
He was slimy, but like the Federation would have had a confrontation if they were running around to different planets. I mean, I guess they would obviously didn't do that to Federation planets. It makes sense to me that the Klingons...
They stopped after Khitomer.
Yeah, exactly. It makes sense that they would have expanded...
But were they still hitting up the Breen and the Romulans?
I think they're too smart to hit up the Romulans. Like, the Romulans were there. I would say that I would believe that about the Klingons. Just they would attack smaller worlds and subsume them into their own empire, probably still. But I still feel like the Federation would have been like, yeah, you got to stop that. Like, fucking stop it, because we can't sit. I don't know. Something to think about, I guess. I don't know that I want to go too much more into it, because I don't know that,
or we devote 4 episodes
exactly. But I mean, I guess something for you guys, if anyone's listening and feels like wanting to write into us or write on our Facebook page, like, what do you think of the Klingons? Do you think that what is your impression of the Klingons of this series? That they are people who are kind of spoiling for a fight, or just warriors by nature, but not... I'm not sure of the word that I'm trying to look for. Not particularly, not warriors with chips on their shoulders. Not easily provoked.
They're warriors by nature, but not warriors by necessity.
Yeah.
Or of necessity.
Yeah.
I think that Cole and Gowron would have got along just
Yeah, I think so too. I feel like Cole would have... I think Cole's like cooler than Gowron. Gowron was always like, to me, kind of like a really slimy nerd.
That's just because... Nobody looks good with a perm.
Yeah, Gowron was just very, like, he looked very rodent-like to me for a Klingon.
HD did not help Gowron.
No, super did not. You know who I miss?
Who do you miss?
Kimpak. Guy was the Kimpak. That guy was the
Which one was Kimpak?
Okay, so like I remember being very intimately acquainted with this storyline because this is right around the time of Worst's commendation. Kimpak is the emperor before Gowron, and Kimpak dies.
And and he names
Picard
Arbiter of Succession.
Mm-hmm. And so Picard, this is like when Picard was like heavy diplomat, like full diplomat Picard, and Picard was like, "Are you sure?" And Kimpak's like, "Yup," and now I'm gonna die, so you can't take it back. And he died. Like, it's super fucked up. Like, and he's really cool. He's very chill. Kimpak is very fat and very smart and very like just not. He's not super.
Kimpak, even though we never really heard it talked about, probably got along well with Curzon.
Kimpak kind of knew how to have fun. To wit, like he realized he was being slowly poisoned by wine, and he realized it. I think after it was too late. So when Picard goes in to when Picard goes to see him, Kimpak's like, "I'm dying." Picard's like, "What?" Or I guess Kalar tells him that he's dying because it's, I think, her first trip there. Picard's like, "What?" And Kimpak's like, "It's the wine. Poisoned." And then he, like, takes another sip. Because Kimpak is a Klingon with exactly nothing to prove. And then, like, later on that episode, he dies. And Picard's like, and that's when...
we saw this coming.
Yeah, and that's when... But it happens quite quickly. And then it might even happen the episode... Is it Kalar's second episode that all happens?
No, because Kalar's second episode, she dies.
Well, yeah, but she dies amidst the struggle for the throne, for the Emperor's seat between Gowron and Duras. She learns that Duras's family is dishonorable, and she stupidly confronts him alone in her quarters, and surprise, surprise, he murders her.
Oh, yeah.
And then Worf kills Duras, which gets him into a lot of trouble, and thus the Duras sisters are freed up to come around next episode. I don't know, we'll have to look that up. That's a good one. But yeah, no, I miss Kimpak. Kimpak was dope. I use that word too much.
Have you been watching The Good Place?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be why.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting question that might end up getting cut out of the episode. Mm-hmm. How do the names of the houses work? Because it seems like whenever we meet an important Klingon, he is named after his house.
I think they just work like last names, and if you're an important member of that house becomes your given name.
I think that I think that when Martok took leadership of the House of Martok, I think Martok was born as Steve.
Yeah, he was Steve Martok, and Duras was Bob Duras.
He was Steve of Martok, and then when he became Martok, he dropped.
I think it's I would think kind of how it works with British royal families, that you could be the Earl of Windsor or the Prince of Wales, so Prince Charles is the Prince of Wales, but his name is Charles Windsor. Makes sense. I think it's sort of along those lines, but I do like the idea that he's like, Steve Martok, and then just became referred to as Martok, and then it was like Bob Duras, and then he was referred to as Duras, because Lursa and B'Etor are only ever referred to as Lursa and B'Etor because they're ladies.
Although now we've seen that there are women leading houses.
This is true.
Laurel's not, but
face chains,
crazy chain leader.
Face chains, McLady Klingon.
Yep. Of House High.
Sorry, I don't know if anybody else likes the McLady Klingon thing but me, but I just really like the way it feels in my mouth. So, sorry guys.
Ron Moore does.
So what are you looking forward to in 1.5?
Hopefully a Lorca that everybody doesn't hate.
But isn't boring?
A Lorca that...
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have put words in your mouth.
Yeah. A Lorca that is... I'm looking forward to crew cohesion.
Me too.
And I think we're there.
I'm honestly looking forward to a little less Burnham.
Not that we don't like Mike.
Love Mike. And I think Sonequa was doing a great fucking job.
Yeah.
And I would also like I'd like to ease off of the Tyler Burnham thing. I'm just not. I think it's getting forced because they want this big explosion of conflict when we figure out the Vogue thing. But
I want more Culber.
I loved that this week. I might run a risk saying this, and it's not meant to offend, but as a straight female, I've never been particularly engaged by homosexual relationships between men in entertainment. It's not something that I balk at seeing, and I have no problem with it. But when it comes to, I tend to be a person who looks for representation in her entertainment, and I need to relate to something to be able to really get into it. And for many obvious reasons, I have a hard time relating to that kind of relationship. But there have been several instances, like, and it's not for lack of trying. I watch a lot of every kind of show that I can get, and this in particular, this relationship, like, I'm hardcore shipping. They are lovely together, and that scene when he says "I love you" right as he's about to do this jump, and Culber's very, very real concern, like Wilson Cruz just slayed this week. His very real concern and desperation. At the same time, his willingness to do what he knows Stamets would want and to follow orders because he is a military doctor. That was fucking great too. Like, oh.
I want to see his sick bay very much.
I don't think he's not the CMO.
More than
I don't think he's the CMO.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. Anyway, go on. I'm sorry, but
to go back to what you were saying, Katie and I talked about this a little bit last night. I think that it's that very rarely do you see specifically male homosexuality relationships portrayed, for lack of a better term, as straight, as in not comedic or not over the top.
Yeah, not like or like not on a show like Looking.
Straight as in straight versus over the top, not straight versus gay.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Well, or just treated like kind of like Ron Moore treated feminism on BSG, where he just didn't mention it. He was like, "We're gonna have
exactly."
Yeah. This is, I think, because even like,
but you do see that with lesbian relationships.
Oh yeah, because it's hot when lesbians get together.
Yes, because the network will sign off.
Yeah, so they've been around longer, so they've gotten to feel their way to more naturality. We've gotten, we have the L word,
and they got Joss
and
Whedon.
we have transparent and all sorts of stuff. Whereas for two men doing it is just an abomination, and it's just not. Yeah, it's so weird.
What's the Frank and Gracie? Frank and Grace?
Grace and Frankie.
Grace and Frankie. That's a show that's doing it well into honestly.
Yeah, in sort of, and in a comedic setting.
In a comedic setting, but not in a way that makes it feel like it.
Yeah, like the gay relationship is not the joke, even though it's the premise of all the jokes, is that they've been happy. But it's also treated with a lot of sensitivity, and it's very, because they've got like amazing actors working on this, and it's I like that show I liked that aspect of that show.
I only caught a few episodes of it.
It's good. Yeah, it's that aspect of it. Like they really deal. It's kind of a transparent type situation, just in terms of them dealing with a family that's still very connected and yet has undergone these massive changes in structure and dynamic. So they deal with that really realistically, but they also it's just funnier. It's in it. The fact that they do it so well in a sitcom-y setting is what really impresses me, because obviously there are a lot of cheap jokes to be had. But anyway, are you feeling good about this? Should we? Is there anything else that you want to?
What do you want to see from Chapter 2?
I really do want to see. I want to get to know Tilly. I want to get to know Saru some more. I want to see this show push its boundaries in terms of ambition. Like the plan that they had last night in this episode of, okay, so what's the plan? Cool. We're going to beam over to the coffin ship and just hang out while this whole thing goes down, and place sensors along the way, risking getting seen, risking like God knows what, and the sensors are big Starfleet beacons with Starfleet written all over them, and they make big lights and lots of noise
that announce that they're connecting to the Discovery.
Yeah,
at 95 decibels.
This was a very risky plan. And I
mean, a lot of the risk could have been allayed with a little bit of gaff tape.
You are correct. I mean, even just to knock out the lights, man. I was like, guys, it's like you're waving your flashlight in the air. But
they put the disco in Discovery.
So yeah, I would. I want to see more. I want to see more audacity like that, because because that's where I feel like Next Gen was a little bit off balance occasionally, was that it was very sciencey. And that's why some of my favorite episodes are episodes like yesterday's Enterprise or The Best of Both Worlds or Chain of Command, because you get to see the military side of Star Trek. And this episode, I thought, blended the military and the science really, really well. And I thought the stakes were nice and high. So I would like to see them kind of pull off the impossible a little bit more.
Yeah.
That was really, because I don't want them to just like learn stuff, because I feel like a lot of Star Trek is like, oh, look at this thing we learned.
And then we learned one more thing about it in the final.
Yeah, and everything turned out to be okay. So I would like to see that.
One thing I would like to see that is sciencey is I want to see another away mission on a planet in an episode that I don't strongly dislike.
Yeah. I want to see some more alien races. I want to see them meet somebody new that has a funky forehead. I want a good old like Captain Bed's an alien lady and problems arise kind of thing. I would like something. I would like a little bit. I would like some more of the mud campiness without mud. I'm with you. I'm still with you on the like. I don't need to see mud for the rest of the season, if not like season 2.
Yeah.
And I would like to see. We didn't really get many canon callbacks this week. I'm probably going to say this every time we want to see something. I want to see Q. I know it's a pipe dream, and I know if I get my wish, I might not. I'm probably not going to like it, but I just really want to see, even if it's just John Delancey like drinking coffee in the mess hall with the like characteristic black lips of Q. I would be down with that too. I might write a letter.
Or just drinking coffee in the mess hall, and then there's a flash of light off camera as we go to the Tilly Burnham conversation. Yeah.
And then she looks and nothing up. I don't know. Please.
Yeah, and he's not there anymore.
Please.
But there's mariachi in
Pretty, please. We had disco. You can give me a mariachi riff and just a quick like peach.
Yep.
But yeah, more. I'd like to get to know. I'd like some more. I'd like a Tilly episode, a Stamets. I guess not really a Stamets episode, but yeah, I'd like to get to know some of the rest of the crew. And
I think we're going to be getting. It's been hinted that we're going to be getting an ARAM episode. ARAM? I think ARAM.
I don't know.
The cyborgy bridge officer.
Oh yeah, see, I'm curious about that because everyone's like, she's a robot, and I was under the impression that Data was the first.
No, she's not a robot. I didn't think so. She's cyborg.
Well, is she cybernetic because she's been wounded, like Kayla?
Yeah,
so she's been really wounded. Okay. All right, well, that's okay. Well, I'm excited about that. Yeah, I think that's.
I want to find out more about Ensign Dash Punk from the Shenzhou.
Mm-hmm. If they survived, she survived.
Yeah, if she survived.
And I also, if I just like totally stupid shit, I do really want to see Ash Tyler look sideways at that Tribble. Like they don't obviously they don't have to have the triple scream. Like I'm not asking for that. That would be really, really freaking stupid. No, but if he just was like,
do have the triple scream and just have Lorca be apologizing.
Yes,
he's never done this
weird.
Before. He's not like
or
this.
If, like,
he's normally so good with strangers. Saru loves him. Here, give him some food, but not too much because he'll get pregnant.
Oh god, or even if just like even if like Ash Tyler like sits in the ready room and they have a meeting, the Tribble's there, and all of a sudden Tyler just sneezes at the end. And we'll all know. That's all you have to give us, guys. That's all you have to give us.
Yeah, and that's the big reveal.
That's it. And that's like, we should have known. That would be just the most brilliant call. Oh, all right. Well, I've got my Christmas list.
Yep.
Okay, folks. Well, that is going to be it for this podcast on the Got Thrones feed from here on out for our mid-season content, which will start next week, which we will interview a very special guest and talk about their favorite episode of Star Trek to be announced.
To be confirmed.
TBC, TBD. that will be on the DiscoTrek feed on iTunes and or Stitcher. So please subscribe. Just search DiscoTrek. Shouldn't be too much more difficult than that. And we'll put links, of course, in the show notes for this episode on Got Thrones. And we will see you next Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. And, yeah, see you back for mid-season discussion of favorite episodes of Trek.
And if I can convince him, maybe a little bit of read-along of Dark Mirror.
Yeah.
Don't count on that, though.
Yeah, and probably more Grey's Anatomy discussion.
Probably. 300 episode. Watching it tonight. Bye, folks. Live long and prosper.
That was fun.